Hello and welcome. What you see here today is a model of an airport, and also you can see from here there is a runway inside it. Now, this model I quickly made it up today morning so that I can explain today's topic, and let's see how this model helps us in making you understand about the topic that we are going to discuss today. So what is today's topic? Today's topic is about an accident that happened an year ago, and for which yesterday on 11th of September the Indian Investigative Bureau for Aircraft Accidents and Incident, that is AAIB, that comes under Ministry of Civil Aviation, that has released the final report to this accident. And what is this accident? Like yesterday, it was the anniversary of a sad moment, the 9/11. Also, yesterday, this particular report has been released, the final report of another sad moment, a sad accident that happened on 7th of August 2020. So, on 7th of August, this particular Air India Express flight that crashed during a landing attempt in the Calicut or Kozhikode International Airport in India. So, we'll make use of this model, but before that, let's try to see, or let's try to learn the background of this accident. Then after that, we'll go to the reports as well, and we'll try to understand what are the circumstances that led to this accident. Could this accident could have been prevented, or what could have been done so that this kind of accidents didn't occur at the first place. So, if you see, on 7th of August, this Air India flight that operated from Dubai to Kozhikode, the flight number 1344, this particular flight, it was a Vande Bharat mission, which was an evacuation effort of Indian government to evacuate the citizens from the Gulf countries or any other foreign countries due to the COVID-19 onslaught. Now, this Vande Bharat mission flight, it had to take passengers from Dubai and land at Calicut International Airport. The flight took off on time, and also it reached to the Calicut International Airport, the airspace of that airport, on time. But when it was on the approach on 7th of August 2020, it found that that area, or that Calicut area, has the weather of the Calicut area is not suitable for landing. There is storm, there is heavy rain, so all the bad conditions for landing were prevailing there. Still, the pilot made an effort, instead of making a diversion, made an effort to land on that runway, and what we saw in the landing attempt, the crash happened. So how did that happen? Let's come back to the model, where we can see, if I can show you, you see this one? This airport and the runway. If you see this one, I have made some clips here, some stiff clips on all around. This is how a tabletop runway look like. You see, I mean, it's a raised portion on a mountainous area where the aircraft lands, and it can land. Suppose this is our aircraft for today, and it can land. Okay. Now, this is the Calicut International Airport. Okay. And this Calicut International Airport has got two runway ends. One is 10, another is 28. You can see that clearly. Why am I saying this two number runway ends? Because in our explanation or in our discussion, these two numbers will be mentioned. And this runway also, as I have mentioned here, you can see the length was 2860 meters. The length of this runway was 2860 meter, and that you can see there is one taxiway here. Term this taxiway as taxiway C. Okay, and this is the building, airport building. Now, on that particular day, the aircraft took approach as scheduled. It came there for landing, and as per schedule, it was supposed to land on the side 28. If I can show you here, see this? It was supposed to land here. But what happened on that particular day? The weather was so bad, the pilot made two unsuccessful landing attempts from this end 28, and the other end is 10, but he was given the scheduled landing opportunity from 28. But the pilot failed to do that, and pilot also informed the air traffic controller that I'm not able to make it through this end, I'm not able to see things properly. So he requested for the other end, which is the 10. So instead of 28 here, now he has to make the landing attempt from 10. So he was given clearance after that, and he came back for the third attempt. I mean, already he made two attempts from this runway 28 end side. Now he is making third attempt from 10. Now, two things. Whenever a flight happens, in the cockpit, there will be two pilots. One pilot is called PF, another pilot is called PM. What is PF? PF is pilot flying. Pilot flying means the pilot who has the major control over the aircraft, or who is flying the aircraft. And what is PM? Pilot monitoring is the pilot who monitors the systems, instrument panels, parameters, data, and other communication things. So these two are there, pilot flying and pilot monitoring. So the pilot flying who was flying, if you see here, they did it from 10 and they did the approach. So pilot flying did the approach, but he missed the touchdown threshold, where the touchdown zone, he missed that, and he almost touched down near this taxi point, which is taxi C. As you can see here, this taxi C, he touched almost there. So he missed by quite a lot, right? So when he missed that, again he continued without thinking of any other things. He continued. By that time, the pilot monitoring, he called for a go around. So that go around was called by the pilot monitoring, but the pilot flying did not comply to that and he continued with the landing roll. He continued with the landing roll, and he crossed the runway end, and after crossing, if you can see here, there is this stiff cliff. So he crossed that and he fell onto this cliff, which is around 25 to 35 feet, fell down there, and the accident, the aircraft broken down into pieces. So now this was the story. He missed the touchdown point. He continued with the roll. There was a call to take off again in that, the go around process, but that was ignored by the pilot flying. He continued with the landing roll, and because it's a tabletop runway, there is after the runway ends, you will not find the plane area there. It is a tabletop. That means how after that you will have the stiff cliff. So here in this area, after that it fell down and it crashed. So there are around 190 occupants there, including cabin crew and pilots. Out of that, 21 fatalities happened. In that 21 fatalities, you can see 2 pilots were involved in that. They also were killed in this action. So this was the story. If you see, this is the story of that day on 7th of August. Now let's try to see what is the report saying. What in the report or in the investigation of the AAIB India, what did they find? They did a thorough investigation and they took more than 1 year. If you see, that was August 2020, and yesterday's date, the 9/11 date, it's more than 1 year. After the investigation, they found that, and which I was expecting or we were expecting, it's the same thing. The pilot did not follow, the pilot who was flying, the PF, did not follow the SOP or standard operating procedures. So standard operating procedures, what could have been? It could have been, there are many, but if you see on that one, what the report says, the probable cause for this accidents, there are different type of outcome from these reports. Some are contributory, some are probable. So the probable cause, we'll discuss some other day about this investigations. I'll bring one more topic regarding this investigation. How do they do, and what is the scope, what are the details they go over during the investigation, and how do they go for cause finding, what are the different teams in the investigation. These all we'll cover on some other day, but for today, the probable cause was pilot crossed the touch mark or touchdown zone and he continued with the landing roll. Despite of the call of pilot monitoring to go around, the pilot flying did not comply and he continued. And during that time, the pilot monitoring who was the pilot who was monitoring, he could have taken the control as well, but he didn't do that. That is also a breach of another standard operating procedure or SOP breach. So two breach here already. One is the pilot crossed threshold, he continued the roll, that is threshold, that is one cause. And after crossing, on the call of pilot monitoring, the pilot who was monitoring, on his call to go around, the pilot flying did not answer. That is another breach. One more breach is the pilot monitoring should have taken the control from pilot flying. That also didn't happen in this case. So these are the breach. Now, this is the probable, I mean the immediate cause why the aircraft crashed. Now, there are some other factors which were there, lurking there on that particular day, which if they could have been followed, then maybe the crash was never there, or the aircraft could have been saved, the lives could have been saved. One thing that comes to my mind, or which investigative team also understands, why not go to an alternate airport? If you know, this is a tabletop runway, which is a critical or dangerous runway for night flying as well as stormy conditions night flying. So stormy conditions night flying, you should have taken some alternate airport. So this is one first contribution, that instead of going there, he tried for the landing. What other contributory factors the AAIB is reporting is, this is a system failure. The AAIB is saying that this is a failure of the system as well, and specifically they are speaking about this particular company. The system has failed there, where the human factors came to action as well. The system or the complete planning of the flight, or the forces, the impulsive forces to carry out that landing was also treated as a contributory factor. One of the reasons they surprisingly say is, next day they wanted to do a flight again. I mean this particular aircraft, which is Victor Tango Alpha X-ray Hotel. This particular aircraft, this was supposed to go for another flight next day. That is why the hurry. That you land it today night itself, there will be a night halt, the inspections will be done, and after that next day morning it will fly. So these are the contributory factors they are talking of. What are other conditions that played a role for this tabletop runway? What could have been? If you see, one investigation was done by Captain Ranganathan, who was a team member of the advisory committee of Ministry of Civil Aviation, who did an inspection on this particular Calicut Airport and facilities. In his report, Mr. Ranganathan found in that, this, if you see this runway, he is saying, first of all, this is a tabletop runway. That means to land on this runway, you should have sufficient landing, takeoff experience or flying experience. That is first condition. What is the second condition? In night conditions or night landing conditions or night flying conditions, the captain should take in charge of the takeoff and landing. What other things was of opinion of Mr. Ranganathan was, if you see here, this runway, the safety RESA, the safety zones or safety buffer zones in this runway were compromised. There are hardly the safety buffer zones or the runway end safety area that was maintained for this particular tabletop runway. It should be ideally be around 240 meters, but for this case in the Calicut, the buffer zone here, if you can see safety RESA, this area, or here also if you can see this area from the here, now this area, this is safety zone. Why it is given? Why is this safety zone? Because in case there is a runway excursion, that means if the aircraft or aeroplane overshoots the runway here, at least he can stay in this area or at least he can stop in this area. So that is around 240 meters ideally, but for this case they had 90 meters, that is one. Another things which he highlighted was about the EMAS, Engineered Materials Arrestor System. What is that EMAS? At the end of the runway is installed with specialized materials or specially designed materials. Those materials will stop any aircraft going beyond the runway limit. Suppose any aircraft overshoots the runway and it's going to make an accident further, they will install some materials, and like take example like some rubbery or some materials which will stop the wheels of the aeroplane. So it is that kind of material, specially engineered material, EMAS. That material should have been here, which definitely, if that already overshoot, if that material is there, that would have stopped there. So EMAS was not there. So these were his findings, and this he had flagged off on quite before the accidents, and even the authorities there, the airport authorities knew of these things, these conditions, and they kept on allowing flights, and specifically in these dangerous conditions. Also, this particular Calicut runway was, it was filled, or it was coated with rubbery deposits. The rubber deposits on the top of this runway surface was quite visible or quite existing. Where do this rubbery deposits come? That's from the landing and takeoff attempts, specifically landing attempt by the aircraft. Whenever the aircraft moves on that, the tires, they keep they leave a rubbery deposit on this the runway. So that was also there. So you see how many non-conformance. One is, we talk about RESA, which is the safety area. So that safety area was compromised, which should have been 240 meters, but it was 90 meters, the RESA, runway end safety area. in each runway ends, in both the runway end. That was compromised. There was no engineered materials. The materials also that was not followed. In fact, in many of the airports in India, we don't have this material. Now, another thing was the rubbery deposits. So these all things were highlighted in that report, and again the safety audits, this particular runway was failing, but still they allowed that. On that particular day, this could have been stopped, or this could have been averted had there been action or compliance to the inspection findings prior. Had there been the ATC not allowing the flight to land there, had there been the pilot flying, could have taken a decision to land at an alternate airport through a diversion. Had there been the pilot flying after touchdown, could have taken a decision to go around, or the pilot monitoring could have taken the control to go around, the accident could have averted. But that didn't happen. And at the end, we saw 21 lives perished in the act. So, in aviation, safety protocols following the standard operating procedures and to comply the audit findings are very much important for a smooth aviation to run, which we all as aviators should look for. I am here to promote aviation and talk about aviation, to encourage the safety culture in aviation, so that aviation should be a haven for the travelers. They should prefer air travel for each and every occasion they need. They should not think twice before taking to an aircraft, because the traveler doesn't know what is the condition you are flying the aircraft, or how is the condition of aircraft. Now, on the condition, this aircraft was quite it was not very old. It was a 2006 manufactured aircraft, so it's not quite old. If you can see, it's only 15 years old aircraft, and for last year it's a 14-year-old aircraft. So there was nothing wrong with the aircraft, and even there was nothing wrong with the experience of the pilot. The pilot had got more than 10,000 flying hours. And in this particular tabletop Calicut runway, if I can show you, he had landed more than 27 times. So what do you expect with such experienced pilot operating the flight? So there was nothing wrong with that. He had many experience, and even in the year of 2020, he had landed almost, I think, 10 times, more than 10 times he had landed. Experience of the pilot or the crew, no issues. Experience of the aircraft condition or age of the aircraft was not an issue. Issue was the standard operating procedures, non-compliance of findings by the airport officials or the authorities, and the contributory factors. Who was forcing the pilot to land on that particular day in a stormy condition? Who was that? Contributory factor, as the report says, he had to again take off next day, or the flight had to go next day. But that can't be a reason to I mean, like attempt something foolish. Even if they did this foolish act, okay, accepted. They tried to do that. The following of standard operating procedures should have been there. I can understand there can be, I mean, like lots of confusion, the plights, lots of things would have, run through the minds of the pilots that day. But at least if on the call of pilot monitoring, the flight would have been taken off again from that point with a go around, we could have averted this particular accident. Anyway, the report, the detailed report will be available. The reports which we have received till today says these are the contributory factors. The pilot failed the standard operating procedures and the contributory factors. We hope the safety culture should never be breached in aviation, because in aviation we always hang on a very thin line. We have very less margin to error. We must comply all the required findings or all the standard operating procedures at all time to make our lives to make the lives of passengers safe and aviation safe at all the time. So this was the topic today about the final report on the Calicut International Airport accident that happened last year, 7th of August 2020. And I hope you all are getting some good information. The same write-up you can see in my website FL360 Aero. You can get there, and there is an article regarding this particular final investigative report. So hope you all are enjoying these presentations. Please write down in the comments below if you need to discuss something more on a particular issue, or anything was not understood to you, or you want to discuss on that more. I'll be happy to attend to that. Thank you very much for today. Please come back. Please